V. Kyle and Claire's future. Kane and Phyllis feud escalates. Indicate that Claire Newman and Kyle Abbott will discuss what's next while Kane Ashby and Phyllis Summers let their conflict spiral out of control. Since Victor Newman is refusing to surrender Lily Winters and the twins, Kane will intensify his efforts to put Newman Enterprises back in his hands. That means going back to Phyllis Summers and trying to bargain with her. Kane will have a proposition for Phyllis to mull over, but his plan won't pay off in the end. Although Kane will think he's got something worth trading for Newman, Phyllis will dig her heels in. What starts out as a fairly calm conversation may escalate to a shouting match soon enough. Kane and Phyllis will trade fierce warnings, so their feud will escalate in a big way. Other Y&R spoilers say Sharon Newman will put Daniel Romalotti Jr. through a grilling session. Since Daniel and Tessa Porter have formed such a strong connection, Sharon will have questions about where things stand between them. Daniel is more than just Tessa's friend at this point, so Sharon may acknowledge that she's picked up on that. Sharon may still be rooting for Tessa and Mariah to reunite, so she might urge Daniel to protect his heart in case he loses Tessa in the end. As for Claire and Kyle, they'll get truthful about the state of their own relationship. Kyle ultimately couldn't wait around on Claire anymore and pushed her away, but now they're drifting back together and becoming more friendly. Following Claire's admission that Holden Novak isn't an option anymore, Kyle may wonder if that changes anything for her. Kyle probably won't want to get his hopes up about a reunion, but he may think they need to be honest about their true feelings. Claire might admit she still thinks about Kyle and considers what might have been. Although Claire can't predict what the future holds, she might confess that she's keeping an open mind and question if Kyle feels that way, too. The Young and the Restless spoilers hint that Kyle and Claire may still have a future together, so stick with us for more news on whether their love lives will intertwine again. On the ever-shifting canvas of The Young and the Restless, where power struggles and romantic reckonings collide beneath the polished surface of Genoa City, the latest wave of drama finds old flames flickering back to life while bitter rivalries threaten to explode beyond repair. And at the heart of it all are two very different but equally combustible storylines: the fragile, uncertain future of Kyle Abbott and Claire Newman, and the escalating war between Kane Ashby and Phyllis Summers, a conflict that could send shockwaves through Newman Enterprises and beyond. As Kyle and Claire cautiously circle each other once more, trying to decide whether their love story deserves another chapter, Kane is charging full speed into battle mode, determined to reclaim what he believes is rightfully his, even if it means striking a dangerous bargain with the one woman who thrives on chaos as much as he does, Phyllis Summers, whose history with power plays, revenge plots, and emotional brinkmanship makes her both a formidable ally and a lethal enemy, with Victor Newman refusing to surrender Lily Winters and the twins to Kane's orbit and digging in his heels as only he can. The corporate and personal stakes are impossibly high, and every conversation, whether whispered in a quiet corner of crimson lights or shouted across a sleek executive office, carries the potential to alter lives forever. Kyle and Claire's journey, meanwhile, unfolds with a softer but no less poignant intensity, rooted in vulnerability rather than vengeance, as they confront the wounds they inflicted on each other when timing and pride drove them apart. Kyle having reached his breaking point when Claire couldn't give him the certainty he craved, pushing her away in a moment of frustration that has since echoed in both their hearts. Yet now, with Claire acknowledging that Holden Novak is no longer an option and that her path forward looks very different than it once did, the door between her and Kyle has creaked open again, just enough to let possibility seep through. Their conversations are layered with hesitation and hope, with Kyle trying not to let optimism make a fool of him while Claire wrestles with the truth that she still imagines what might have been, still measures new experiences against the memory of what she felt with him, and still wonders if the future she once envisioned is truly lost or simply delayed. In classic Y&R fashion, their dialogue brims with subtext, every glance and pause carrying emotional weight, and when Claire admits she is keeping an open mind about what comes next, it is both a confession and a challenge, inviting Kyle to meet her halfway without promising him a fairytale ending, because in Genoa City love is rarely simple and second chances often come at a price. While this tentative romance simmers, the temperature skyrockets elsewhere as Kane Ashby approaches Phyllis Summers with what he believes is a masterstroke, a proposition designed to shift the balance of power at Newman Enterprises and undermine Victor's iron grip. But underestimating Phyllis has always been a dangerous mistake, and though Kane may walk into their meeting projecting calm confidence, convinced he has something of value to trade, Phyllis listens with the sharp, calculating focus of someone who has survived countless corporate wars and knows that leverage is everything. At first their exchange carries a veneer of civility, two seasoned players testing each other's boundaries, yet it doesn't take long for old grievances and mutual distrust to surface, their voices rising as accusations fly and the fragile possibility of alliance crumbles into open hostility, because Phyllis refuses to be cornered or manipulated, especially not by a man whose ambitions threaten to destabilize the delicate ecosystem she has carved out for herself. Kane's desperation intensifies as he realizes his offer is not landing the way he intended, and the more he presses, the more Phyllis digs in her heels, until the conversation becomes a shouting match fueled by pride and wounded egos, each warning the other of consequences that could ripple far beyond a single boardroom showdown. Victor Newman's shadow looms large over this clash, his refusal to yield Lily and the twins symbolizing a broader refusal to cede control, and though he is not physically present in every scene, his influence shapes every decision, every strategy, every act of defiance. Because challenging Victor is never a small endeavor, it is a declaration of war. As Kane doubles down on his mission to reclaim NEWMAN Enterprises, he risks alienating potential allies and igniting enemies he cannot afford, and Phyllis, ever the survivor, may decide that aligning with Victor, even temporarily, serves her interests better than trusting Kane's volatile vision. Elsewhere, Sharon Newman finds herself navigating a more intimate but equally complex dilemma when she turns her attention to Daniel Romalotti Jr., whose growing bond with Tessa Porter has not gone unnoticed, and Sharon's protective instincts kick in as she questions where exactly Daniel and Tessa stand, aware that emotional entanglements rarely remain simple in a town where past loves and unresolved feelings linger just beneath the surface. Sharon's grilling session with Daniel is not malicious but maternal and cautious, driven by her hope. Caught between friendship and something deeper, must confront his own heart under Sharon's probing gaze, forced to articulate feelings he may not yet fully understand. This intertwining of romantic uncertainty and corporate warfare encapsulates the enduring appeal of the young and the restless, where personal choices reverberate through families and businesses alike, and where every character stands at a crossroads shaped by loyalty, ambition, and longing. Kyle and Claire's tentative Reconnect Ion offers a glimmer of hope amid the chaos, a reminder that growth often requires distance and that timing can be both enemy and ally, yet their path forward is anything but guaranteed, because trust once broken is not easily restored, and both must decide whether they are brave enough to risk heartbreak again. Kane and Phyllis Feud, on the other hand, promises fireworks and fallout, a battle of wills that could reshape alliances and redefine power in Genoa City, especially if Victor chooses to retaliate against Kane's audacity with the full force of his empire. As secrets surface, loyalties shift, and emotions run high, the coming days will test every relationship at the center of this storm, proving once again that in this iconic American television saga, love and power are two sides of the same coin, and those who chase one often find themselves sacrificing the other, leaving viewers on edge as they await the next twist in a story where the future is never certain. But the drama is always guaranteed. As the tension continues to mount in The Young and the Restless, the emotional fault lines running through Genoa City grow deeper and more volatile, threatening to swallow even the most carefully constructed plans. And nowhere is that more evident than in the parallel arcs unfolding between Kyle Abbott and Claire Newman's fragile Reconnect Ion and the intensifying standoff between Kane Ashby and Phyllis Summers. What makes these stories so compelling is not just the surface-level drama but the psychological undercurrents driving every decision, every hesitation, and every outburst, because in a town built on legacy and rivalry, no action exists in isolation, and every move reverberates through family lines that stretch back generations. For Kyle, the son of an Abbott dynasty that has long measured worth by resilience and loyalty, the idea of giving Claire another chance is not simply about romance but about identity, about whether he is the kind of man who clings to pride or the kind who fights for love even after it has slipped through his fingers. And when he looks at Claire now, he sees not only the woman who once pulled away when he needed certainty but also the woman who has grown, who has weathered her own storms under the immense pressure of being a Newman, constantly navigating expectations set by a family whose name carries as much burden as privilege. Claire's journey has been one of self-discovery, of untangling her desires from the strategic calculations that often define Newman decision-making, and her admission that Holden Novak is no longer an option is less about closing one door and more about acknowledging that she was seeking distraction rather than destiny. that in trying to prove she could move on she may have only proven how unfinished her story with Kyle truly was. Their renewed closeness is marked by cautious laughter and long, searching conversations, the kind that stretch late into the evening and drift from light nostalgia into raw honesty, as they dissect the moment everything fractured between them, Kyle confessing that his impatience stemmed from fear of being second choice, fear of building a future on shifting sand, while Claire admits that she hesitated not because she doubted her feelings but because she doubted herself, unsure whether she could reconcile her ambitions with the vulnerability love demands. This mutual candor creates a fragile bridge between them, yet both are acutely aware that bridges can collapse if the foundation is weak, and so they test each other gently, asking questions that hover between hope and self-protection, Kyle wondering aloud whether Claire can truly envision a shared future without the shadow of hesitation creeping in again, and Claire countering with a quiet challenge of her own, asking whether Kyle can promise not to bolt at the first sign of uncertainty. Meanwhile, across town, the clash between Kane and Phyllis escalates from verbal sparring into a strategic chess match with potentially explosive consequences, because although their initial confrontation devolved into raised voices and fierce warnings, neither is foolish enough to ignore the stakes at play, and both retreat to regroup, recalibrating their approaches while keeping a wary eye on Victor Newman's next move. Kane's determination to reclaim control of Newman Enterprises is fueled by more than ambition, it is deeply personal, intertwined with his sense of justice regarding Lily Winters and the twins, whom he believes have been unfairly kept under Victor's influence, and his frustration grows as he realizes that every avenue he pursues seems to circle back to the patriarch's unyielding authority. Turning to Phyllis was, in his mind, a calculated risk, a gamble that her penchant for disruption might align with his desire to shake Victor's empire. But Phyllis has survived too many battles to leap into another without ironclad guarantees, and in the privacy of her own reflections she weighs the cost of siding with Kane against the potential rewards of maintaining, or even strengthening, her position with Victor. Phyllis understands that chaos can be profitable, but only if she controls the narrative, and Kane's fiery insistence on swift action threatens to pull her into a storm she does not fully command, so she begins quietly gathering information, reaching out to trusted contacts, probing for weaknesses in Kane's proposal while simultaneously signaling to Victor that she remains a player worth keeping close. Victor, ever the strategist, senses the tremors of unrest and responds not with overt aggression but with subtle maneuvers designed to remind Kane who truly holds the upper hand, reinforcing alliances, tightening corporate safeguards, and perhaps even planting seeds of doubt among those who might otherwise be tempted to back Kane's rebellion. As this corporate Cold War simmers, Sharon Newman's conversation with Daniel Romalotti Jr. ripples outward in more intimate ways, because her protective instincts toward Tessa Porter are rooted in love for her daughter Mariah and a lingering hope that fractured bonds can still be mended, and when she questions Daniel about his growing connection with Tessa, it is with a mixture of empathy and caution. Acknowledging that emotions do not follow tidy timelines and that healing can sometimes take unexpected forms, Daniel, who has long carried the weight of complicated romantic history himself, finds Sharon's probing both uncomfortable and clarifying, forcing him to confront whether his closeness with Tessa is a natural evolution of friendship or a subconscious attempt to fill his own voids. And as he articulates his feelings, he begins to recognize that whatever is developing between them deserves honesty, not secrecy or half measures. Sharon, though perhaps still quietly rooting for a Tessa and Mariah reunion, cannot deny the sincerity she hears in Daniel's voice, and this realization challenges her to reconsider her assumptions about what is best for everyone involved. Back in the Abbott world, Kyle's family inevitably becomes part of his internal struggle, their legacy of perseverance serving as both inspiration and pressure, because to love a Newman is to accept a lifetime of rivalry and reconciliation, of boardroom skirmishes bleeding into holiday dinners, and Kyle must decide whether he is ready to re-enter that arena not as a corporate adversary but as a partner to someone whose last name will always complicate his own. Claire, too, grapples with family expectations, aware that any renewed relationship with Kyle will be scrutinized through the lens of Newman Abbott history, and she questions whether she can carve out a space where their love is defined by them, rather than by generational grudges. As they inch closer, sharing moments of unguarded affection that hint at rekindled passion, the audience senses both the sweetness of possibility and the looming threat of external interference, because in Genoa City happiness rarely goes unchallenged. Kane's impatience, meanwhile, drives him to consider bolder tactics, perhaps even leveraging information that could destabilize Victor's alliances or expose vulnerabilities within NEWMAN enterprises. Yet every aggressive move risks alienating Lily further, and the irony is not lost on him that in fighting to reclaim his family he may be pushing them farther away. Phyllis, ever adaptable, contemplates a different kind of power play, one that positions her as indispensable to both sides, a broker of secrets who can tip the scales at the precise moment it benefits her most. And as she sharpens her strategy, her feud with Kane becomes less about shouting matches and more about psychological warfare, each testing the other's resolve with calculated provocations. The city buzzes with speculation, whispers circulating through offices and cafes alike, because when titans clash in Genoa City, collateral damage is inevitable, and even those on the periphery brace for impact. Through it all, the central question remains whether love can survive amid ambition and whether ambition can be tempered by love, themes that have long defined this enduring American television saga. And as Kyle and Claire stand on the brink of a potential reunion while Kane and Phyllis edge toward open warfare, the contrasts between tenderness and ruthlessness, vulnerability and vengeance, underscore the intricate tapestry that keeps viewers invested. The coming days promise revelations and repercussions, alliances forged and broken, and moments of quiet introspection that cut as deeply as any shouted threat, reminding us that in this world, the most dramatic battles are often fought not only in boardrooms and living rooms but within the hearts of those who dare to hope for something better. Even when history suggests that peace in Genoa City is always temporary and every victory carries the seed of the next conflict. As the storm clouds gather once more over the young and the restless, the emotional and corporate chessboards of Genoa City become even more intricately aligned, each move echoing across relationships that are already strained to their limits. And what makes this chapter especially riveting is the way personal vulnerability and ruthless ambition are unfolding side by side, almost daring fate to decide which will prevail. For Kyle Abbott and Claire Newman, the quiet moments they now share feel almost surreal compared to the sharp edges that once defined their breakup, and yet that history lingers between them like an unspoken third presence, reminding them that love alone was not enough before, and may not be enough now unless they actively choose growth over ego. Kyle finds himself reflecting on how quickly he let frustration dictate his actions, how the fear of being left in emotional limbo pushed him to issue ultimatums rather than extend patience, and in revisiting those memories, he begins to recognize that true partnership requires endurance, not just passion, a lesson learned too late the first time but perhaps not too late for a second chance. Claire, on the other hand, wrestles with her own internal narrative, one shaped by a lifetime of navigating the formidable NEWMAN legacy, where strength is often equated with control and vulnerability can feel like weakness, and in admitting that she still thinks about Kyle, still imagines what their life might have looked like had she chosen differently. She is not merely confessing lingering affection but challenging the protective walls she built around her heart. Their conversations grow deeper, more layered, touching not only on what went wrong but on what they truly want moving forward: careers, family, independence, partnership, and whether those visions can coexist rather than compete. Kyle dares to ask whether Claire sees him as part of her long-term future or simply as a comforting echo of a love that once burned brightly, and Claire responds with a candor that both reassures and unsettles him, explaining that while she cannot promise certainty, she can promise effort, honesty, and a willingness to stop running when things become complicated. This fragile commitment to transparency becomes the cornerstone of their tentative reconciliation, yet both understand that external pressures, from family expectations to corporate rivalries, will test their resolve in ways they cannot yet predict. Meanwhile, Kane Ashby's frustration morphs into calculated defiance as his failed attempt to secure